When I first met Maria, she was sweeping the small shop where she had worked for 10 years. Her hands were tired from years of labor, her worn hands sweeping. Her eyes were kind, holding a gentle light. She told me, in a voice weary and proud, her shop paid part-time wages now. The familiar faces of customers, once a steady stream, were fewer and farther between. Her son moved to the sprawling city to find work. He sent money home when he could, but it was never enough. Maria used to think of herself as middle class. That label meant stability. It meant she could pay her bills on time. It meant she could afford a small birthday celebration. It meant she wouldn't panic if the refrigerator broke. It meant believing her children would have it a little better. Now she did not know what to call herself. The old words did not fit the new reality. In a bustling city, Ahmed is a taxi driver. He owned his cab for many years. It was his pride and joy. He knew the streets like the back of his hand. He had a long list of regular customers. He was proud of his work, proud of the independence, proud of the steady living it provided for his family. Then the ride-hailing apps came, seemingly overnight. The streets flooded with new drivers using their own cars, drivers guided by a satellite map. Prices for a ride fell. Competition became fierce. Ahmed had to work longer and longer hours, driving late into the night. He could not sleep. Worry was a constant companion. His children sometimes missed school when money was tight. In a small Eastern European city, Elena worked at a factory. That factory was the heart of her community for generations. The company announced it was moving the work to another country. The factory closed its gates for the last time. Elena went back to school to learn new skills. She found new work, but it paid much less and offered no security. Her small savings began to shrink. In a big coastal city, Lee and her husband lived in a small apartment. They both had steady jobs, but rents began to rise at a dizzying pace. Lee's pay did not keep up. More and more of her income went to rent. Less for fresh food, less for health care. Almost nothing left to save. They ran faster just to stay in place. Owning a home drifted further out of reach. In a quiet farming town, Samuel watched the weather change. The predictable cycle became erratic and harsh. Droughts grew longer. Soil turned dry and hard. The crops failed more often than they succeeded. Each year he had a little less money to get by on. Young people left for the city in search of something better. The town became quieter. The school became smaller. The main street emptied. These stories are simple. They are the quiet, everyday struggles of real people. They show faces and real feelings. They show hopes. They show fears. Powerful currents that shape our work, our prices, and our chance to move up. Yeah. This uncertainty is not Maria's alone. All over the world, bustling cities, quiet country towns, they are the backbone of our societies. People who work hard, people who follow the rules, people who believe in a better tomorrow, people who once had steady jobs, a modest house, and a firm hope for their children's future now find themselves worrying. They lie awake at night, doing the silent math of income versus expenses. The numbers often do not add up like they used to. This is the story of our time. The global middle class, that engine of stability and progress, is getting smaller. This is a quiet change, a slow erosion rather than a sudden collapse. It does not make loud headlines every day. It is a subtle shift, happening in kitchens, workshops, classrooms, factory floors. One of the greatest forces reshaping our world is one we see every day: technology. Machines are learning to do many jobs people used to do. Software is learning to do many jobs people used to do. This is especially true for simple routine work that follows a clear set of rules. On a factory floor, a robot arm can now weld a piece of metal with perfect precision, over and over, without ever getting tired or needing a break. In an office, a sophisticated computer program can scan thousands of documents, sort data, and even answer basic customer questions, reducing the need for a large administrative staff. This is the process we call automation, and it is changing the very nature of work itself. This march of the machines is not new, of course. We have seen it before, with the invention of the steam engine and with the assembly line. But today, the pace of change feels faster, and its reach is wider. It's touching blue-collar jobs and white-collar professions as well. Some new jobs are certainly created in this process. We need people to design the robots, to write the software, and to maintain the complex systems that run our modern world. This creates a gap. People with basic or outdated skills may find fewer and fewer good jobs available to them, pushing them into lower-paying service roles or out of the workforce entirely. Think of a bank teller. For decades, this was a stable, middle-class job. Tellers knew their customers by name and were a trusted part of the community. Today, many of us do our banking on our phones or at an automated teller machine. The number of human tellers needed has dropped significantly. Or consider a warehouse worker. A single person operating a highly automated system of conveyor belts and robotic pickers can now do the work that once required a dozen people. This efficiency is good for the company's bottom line, but it can be devastating for the workers who are no longer needed. This change is slow and steady, but it is real, and its effects are cumulative. It is like a quiet tide that is slowly redrawing the map of the job market. It is not that technology is bad. It has brought us incredible benefits and conveniences. The challenge is that the gains from this increased productivity are not always shared widely. The owners of the technology often see their incomes soar, and the highly skilled workers who manage it often do too, while the middle-skilled workers whose jobs are automated can be left behind. It changes the kinds of work that exist, and it asks a fundamental question. Another powerful force is what we call globalization. In recent decades, the world has become smaller and more connected than ever before. We have torn down walls, both real and symbolic, allowing goods, money, and ideas to flow across borders with incredible speed. This has had a profound impact. Global trade has lifted hundreds of millions of people out of extreme poverty, a historic achievement we should not forget. Factories built in some countries created new waves of jobs, offering people a chance at a better life and a foothold on the ladder of the middle class. This interconnectedness has brought us a wider variety of goods at lower prices and has spurred innovation around the globe. Yet this same global competition has a different side to its story. When a company can make a product anywhere in the world, it will naturally look for the place where it can be made most cheaply. This often means moving jobs from countries with higher wages and stronger worker protections to places where pay is lower and regulations are weaker. A town in the American Midwest that once thrived on a single large factory making furniture might see that factory close, and the jobs move to Southeast Asia. For the company, it is a logical business decision. For the town and its workers, it can feel like a betrayal. People must adapt to these shifts, and some do. A worker might learn a new trade, perhaps in healthcare or information technology. A town might reinvent itself, attracting tourism or new, smaller businesses. But this process of adaptation is not easy, and it does not happen for everyone. For many, the new jobs that appear pay less than the old ones and offer fewer benefits, like health insurance or a pension. A person who once earned a solid middle-class wage on an assembly line might now find themselves working 2 or 3 part-time jobs in the service sector just to make ends meet. This is a difficult and often disheartening transition. The story of globalization is therefore a story of winners and losers. The highly educated professional in a global city whose skills are in demand worldwide benefits enormously. The consumer who can buy a cheap television or smartphone also benefits. But the worker whose job can be done more cheaply elsewhere faces a much more precarious existence. But to manage it more fairly, it asks us to think about how we can soften the blows for those who lose out, how we can protect workers' rights everywhere, and how we can ensure that the immense benefits of a connected world are shared more broadly among all its people. For most families, the biggest expense and the most important asset is their home. Having a place to call your own is a cornerstone of the middle-class dream. It provides not just shelter, a sense of stability, a connection to a community, a way to build wealth over time. Yet, in many cities and even some suburban areas around the world, this cornerstone is becoming a heavy burden. For several decades, the price of houses and the cost of rent have been rising much faster than wages. This growing gap is putting an immense strain on household budgets and making the dream of a stable home feel increasingly distant for many. This leaves less and less money for everything else a family needs to thrive. When a huge portion of your monthly paycheck goes directly to your landlord or your mortgage payment, something has to give. It might mean cutting back on fresh, healthy food and relying on cheaper, processed options. It could mean postponing a necessary visit to the doctor or dentist because the copay is too high. For a comfortable retirement or even for an emergency, becomes nearly impossible. A family can have the same income they had 5 years ago, or even a slightly higher one, but if their housing costs have doubled, they will feel much poorer. What is driving these rising prices? It is a complex mix of factors. In some popular cities, there is simply not enough housing being built to keep up with the number of people who want to live there. In other places, wealthy individuals and large investment firms buy up properties not to live in, but as a safe place to park their money, which drives up prices for everyone else. Zoning laws can make it difficult to build more affordable types of housing, like small apartment buildings or duplexes. When housing is treated more like a speculative financial asset than a basic human need, prices can become disconnected from the reality of local wages. This creates a dangerous situation. Families are pushed further and further from city centers, leading to long, expensive, and stressful commutes. They are trapped in a cycle of renting, unable to save the large down payment needed to buy a home of their own. They are closer to the edge where a single unexpected event, a job loss, a medical bill, a car repair, can be enough to push them over the line into financial crisis. The simple security of a stable home, once a reliable feature of middle-class life, is now a source of deep anxiety for millions. A society where people cannot afford to live in the communities where they work is a society that is becoming dangerously unbalanced. In the economy of the past, a strong back and a willingness to work hard were often enough to secure a good job. A person could graduate from high school, get a job at the local factory or mill, and build a comfortable, middle-class life for their family. They could expect to stay with the same company for many years, earn a decent wage, and retire with a pension. That world, for the most part, is gone. Today's good jobs, the ones that pay a living wage and offer a path to advancement, increasingly require a higher level of education or specialized technical skills. The gap between the skills people have and the skills employers need is widening, and it is leaving many people behind. This is not to say that everyone needs a 4-year university degree. A 2-year associate's degree, a vocational certificate in a trade like plumbing, a vocational certificate in a trade like electrical work, or a certification in a high-demand tech field. Yet, access to this kind of education and training is not equal for everyone. Schools in poorer towns and neighborhoods are often underfunded, with fewer resources, larger class sizes. This puts children from lower-income families at a disadvantage from the very beginning. They may not get the strong foundation in math and reading that they need to succeed in higher education or the workforce. For adults who are already in the workforce and see their jobs threatened by automation or globalization, going back to school can be incredibly difficult. They may not have the time, with the demands of work and family. They may not have the money to pay for tuition, especially if they are already struggling to make ends meet. And they may not have the confidence, feeling that it is too late for them to learn something new. Without robust and accessible programs for lifelong learning and worker retraining, people can become trapped in a cycle of low-pay, low-skill jobs with no clear path to move up. The result is a divided labor market. On one side are the highly skilled and highly educated who can command high salaries and have their choice of interesting and challenging work. On the other side are those with more basic skills who are competing for a shrinking number of low-wage jobs in sectors like retail and fast food. The middle, where the stable, well-paying jobs for moderately skilled workers used to be, has been hollowed out. Closing this skills gap is one of the most critical challenges we face. It requires investing in our public schools, making higher education and vocational training more affordable, and creating systems that help people adapt and learn throughout their entire working lives. Our economies have continued to grow. Over the past few decades, the total amount of wealth in the world has increased dramatically. We are producing more, creating more, innovating more than at any other time in human history. But that is not what has been happening. The harvest of this incredible growth has been unevenly shared. A very small group at the very top has captured a very large and growing share of this new wealth, while the incomes of most ordinary workers have stagnated or grown only very slowly. Graphic CEO pay versus worker pay diverging sharply. This is the force of rising inequality. Wealth is becoming more and more concentrated in the hands of a few. These individuals and their families often earn their money not from a weekly paycheck, but from capital. Things like stocks, bonds, real estate, ownership of businesses. In recent years, returns on this kind of capital have grown much faster than returns on labor. In simple terms, money has been making more money than people have been making by working. This creates a feedback loop that makes the rich richer, while the middle class and the poor struggle to keep up. This isn't just about fairness, though that is part of the story. High levels of inequality can also be bad for the economy as a whole. Middle-class families are the engine of consumer spending. When they have money in their pockets, they buy cars. They fix their roofs. They go out to dinner. They take vacations. This creates demand and supports jobs for everyone else. The ultra-wealthy can only buy so many yachts, mansions. A lot of their money gets saved or reinvested in financial markets, rather than being spent on goods and services that create jobs in the real economy. When people feel that the system is rigged, that no matter how hard they work, they cannot get ahead, they lose faith. They lose faith in their institutions, in their leaders, and in the idea of a shared society. This can lead to social and political instability. The feeling that the gains of economic growth are not being shared fairly is a powerful and corrosive force. It erodes the social trust that holds us together and makes it harder to solve our common problems. Addressing this concentration of wealth is not about punishing success. It is about ensuring that our economy works for everyone, not just those at the top. We have to think about that seriously. In generations past, a family could build a middle-class life with very little debt. A house could be purchased with a modest mortgage, a college education could be paid for with a summer job, and a medical emergency did not necessarily mean financial ruin. Today, for many families, debt has become a constant and heavy presence in their lives. They are borrowing more money than ever before, not for luxuries, but for the basic building blocks of a secure life: education, housing, and even health care. This mountain of debt can take a huge bite out of a family's monthly income, leaving them with little room to breathe. Student loan debt is a prime example. The cost of a university education has skyrocketed in many countries, far outpacing inflation and wage growth. To get the degree that is now seen as essential for a good job, young people and their families are taking on staggering amounts of debt. They start their working lives already deep in a financial hole, with large monthly payments that can last for decades. This makes it harder for them to save for a down payment on a house, start a business, or even afford to have children. They are forced to delay the traditional milestones of adult life, their financial futures mortgaged before they even begin. At the same time, the nature of work itself has become more insecure for many. The classic model of a full-time, permanent job with a single employer is becoming less common. Instead, we see a rise in part-time work, temporary contracts, and the gig economy, where people work as independent contractors without the benefits and protections of traditional employment. This kind of work can offer flexibility, but it also creates uncertainty. Income can fluctuate wildly from one month to the next, making it difficult to budget or plan for the future. And without social safety nets like paid sick leave, unemployment insurance, a small problem can quickly escalate into a major crisis. This combination of high debt and insecure work creates a state of permanent financial fragility. Families are walking a tightrope with no safety net below. A single unexpected event, the car breaking down, a child getting sick, a reduction in work hours, can be enough to send them tumbling into default, eviction, or bankruptcy. This is not a life of stability and security. It is a life of constant stress and anxiety. When a large portion of the population is living in this precarious state, it is not just a personal problem, it is a systemic risk to the health and stability of our entire society. Well, that is a heavy burden to carry. Invest in education. Invest in training for people at every stage of life. Properly fund our public schools to give every child a strong start. Make higher education more affordable. Make vocational training more affordable and accessible. Build robust systems for lifelong learning to help adults adapt as the job market changes. Support small businesses. Support local shops and farms that keep wealth circulating in a community. Through smarter regulations and better access to credit. Build stronger social safety nets, universal health care, affordable child care, adequate unemployment benefits. These measures act as a shock absorber, easing the blows when someone loses a job or gets sick. Make housing more affordable, better urban planning, build more homes, implement fair rules to discourage speculation and protect renters. Create a fairer tax system that asks the wealthiest to pay their fair share, and use that revenue to fund public services that benefit everyone. These are not radical ideas. They're about restoring balance to our economy and society. Making choices that prioritize the well-being of the many, not just the profits of the few. Encourage fair trade, not just free trade. Include environmental standards in international agreements. Help communities adapt to climate change by supporting farmers with new techniques. Help our cities prepare for new climate challenges. Support the right of workers to organize and have a voice. Unions and worker groups have historically been powerful forces for sustaining a strong middle class. These small efforts can really add up. So, we come back to Maria, who still sweeps her shop with tired hands and kind eyes. She still smiles at the few customers who come in. She still holds on to the hope that her son, far away in the big city, will find the better life she dreamed for him. Her story, in its quiet dignity and its unspoken worries, is like the story of millions upon millions of people all over this world. The middle class is changing, it is shrinking, and the solid ground that so many families once stood upon is eroding beneath their feet. The causes are many, and they are powerful. The pain is real, even if it is often silent. The solutions are not simple. They will not come from one single law or one brilliant leader. They ask for a long and sustained commitment. They ask for planning, for fairness, and for a deep sense of care for one another. When the middle class shrinks, the cost is quiet, but it is profound. It can slow down economic growth and stir up currents of anger and resentment that can poison our public life. But in the midst of this challenge, there is also a quiet hope. People are resilient. They adapt. New kinds of jobs are growing in fields like healthcare, green energy, and personal services. Small towns, left for dead, can find new life. Our cities can become fairer and more livable places for all. We must keep one simple image in our minds. A family sitting at their dinner table. A father and a mother talking about their day, helping their children with homework, worrying about the bills, and daring to dream about the future. That dinner table is the place where all these big, abstract forces become real. It is where policy and markets, technology and globalization meet the daily lives of ordinary families. The well-being of the family at that table should be the ultimate measure of our success as a society. That is what is at stake. So as we go about our own lives, let us carry a quiet question with us. Think about the people you know, the people you work with, the people who live in your town or your city. Who is struggling? Who needs a helping hand? What small step can you take this week to help a neighbor, to support a local business, or to contribute to a school? Change begins when we see the faces behind the statistics. Then it can grow into a force of its own. The question is not only why the middle class is shrinking. The real question is, what are we, together, going to choose to do about it next? Well, think on that.